So I have solved this little political dilemma for myself in a very simple way. On election day, I stay home. I don't vote. Fuck them. Fuck them. I don't vote. Two reasons I don't vote. First of all, it's meaningless. This country was bought and sold and paid for a long time ago. The shit they shuffle around every 4 years doesn't mean a fucking thing. And secondly, I don't vote because I believe if you vote, you have no right to complain. People like to twist that around, I know. They say, well, if you don't vote, you have no right to complain. But where's the logic in that? If you vote and you elect dishonest, incompetent people and they get into office and screw everything up, well, you are responsible for what they have done. You caused the problem. You voted them in. You have no right to complain. I, on the other hand, who did not vote, who in fact did not even leave the house on election day, am in no way responsible for what these people have done and have every right to complain as loud as I want about the mess you created that I had nothing to do with. So I know that a little later on this year you're going to have another one of those really swell presidential elections that you like so much. You'll enjoy yourselves. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure as soon as the election is over, your country will improve immediately. As for me, I'll be home on that day doing essentially the same thing as you. The only difference is when I get finished masturbating, I'm going to have a little something to show for it, folks. Thank you very much.
Welcome to What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. My name is Andy Libson, and with us today is Gema Alberta Sotomayor. It's been a while, Gema. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We'll get into that some more, but first, some business. We are online at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find the link to our blog in the episode notes. Please subscribe, rate, review, turn on your notifications, share your favorite episode, and jot down our information wherever you found this episode. So first off, no Kenny, no Eduardo, no Alex. It's just me and you, Gema. All right.
I know, you're down to your last leg.
Yes. And it's been a while. It has been a while since you've joined us. We are going to be talking about the elections, lesser evilism. But first, we've got to kind of talk about where you've been, what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I am a mom. I have a 3.5-month-old upstairs who might make a guest appearance depending on how quick the dad can have him finish his bottle and how long our conversation goes.
Yeah.
But yes.
And his name is?
Dariel.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it's Dariel. Bye. My mom's making a guest appearance.
I see.
So his name is Dariel, and he has been such a blessing. Such a blessing. I cannot say such a happy, good, loving baby. The first turn at this being a mom has been fantastic. Has been great.
Yes. And you have just recently stopped maternity leave, and you're back at work over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
I'm going on a month, actually, because I started August 12th. I decided to cut my maternity leave short because my employer lets me divide it. And so I'm going to take the rest of the time next year to go to Nicaragua for a month with the baby and Jorge. And then I'm also going to take a couple weeks before his first birthday so we can be together.
Right. Well, I'm very happy for you. It's been great to visit. We haven't been able to visit enough. But it's been great to see you, see him. I am just so glad that you're happy and Jorge is doing well. And of course, Dariel he's just getting happier and happier every day. He's got 2 wonderful parents and an awesome grandma who is taking care of him as well.
Yeah, he's just been great. And we've been able to take all these trips today. We had a long day with him on the road and he was just so happy. Just so happy. He's happy to be alive.
Right. It'll be your second kid that's going to be the screamer.
Yeah, we're not.
Let's not talk about that yet. But anyway, as if you're not doing enough, how did this come to be? Well, first off, we have a WhatsApp group that you're on, and Jessica's on, and Eduardo, and all the people who are possibly part of What's Left. And I sent after I had watched an episode of what's The Last American Vagabond, which I might mention more about as I talk about this episode. Um, I had this idea for a future episode. I said, taking up this question, why can't I vote for lesser evil once a year and fight for change the rest of the year? Which is a question people kind of pose as they choose to vote for Biden, or choose to vote for Kamala Harris, or choose to vote for Donald Trump, or choose to vote for whoever. But it definitely for the two big parties, Republican, Democrat. That's the kind of lesser evil. Why can't I just vote and be done with it? And I posted this to everyone, and I was really surprised that you, when the last time on one of my visits to your house, you were interested in taking up this issue, and I was kind of surprised. First, I was surprised because you got plenty on your plate. I did not see you coming back to this soon necessarily. But second, I was surprised that it was this issue, which was the one that was like, I want to talk about this one.
I'm a mom, and if I didn't care about the world as much then, I definitely care about it now. So I know that you would think, well, then you would want to get out there and vote, and it's made me want to vote even less being a mom.
Okay, that's
I
interesting.
do, I do have, a couple of contradictory thoughts, and it's an ongoing battle with myself. Even when I see some things, and I go through these cycles of no, I should, responsible thing for my baby, but then it's like, nah, fuck it, I really shouldn't. I should stand my ground. Like, ultimately, do I vote and hope for change for a better world for my baby, or do I stand my ground and show my baby that's, you don't have to participate in that, and I'm choosing the latter.
Yeah, and let me say a little bit of the background that came up for me, why I brought this up, because I didn't really talk to you about it, and then you can go and say more deeply about your thoughts about it. So, do you know the show called Last American Vagabond? Have you heard of it?
No.
It's hosted by a guy named Ryan Christian. He's like I don't know if he's left or right. He does kind of straddle that line, like, pretty well, and he's definitely a libertarian, and definitely a person who is critical of the mainstream narrative. And he had been talking about a thing that you've heard the name Whitney Webb before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Whitney Webb and Derek Bros were kind of starting a little independent media group, basically saying we've got it right about the COVID narrative. We've got it right about Palestine, and we've got it right about the two-party deception. Um, and they were saying, like, a lot of the people that we thought were gonna stay out of that whole thing and stay out of the two-party thing, they're kind of implying that people are rushing back to go vote, whether it be for a Democrat or be a Republican. And I was glad that they tried to hold the line on that. I think they took some criticism for that. But one of the things they were saying was that they were kind of implying, or at least Ryan Christian was in that episode, that the two-party system is kind of cracking. Like that narrative, that lesser evil narrative, or you've got to vote narrative, they thought it was cracking. And be honest, I don't agree with that. I'd be curious what you would have to say. Of course, I want it to be cracking, but I don't see that. In fact, what's very interesting for me about a new revival of lesser evilism is I've only experienced lesser evilism from the Democratic Party side, where people talking about, I don't necessarily like this Democrat, but I got to vote for him because they got that Republican Hitler coming. And now you see a new lesser evilism, but it's the same coming from the other side. People saying Kamala Harris and the establishment is behind Kamala Harris, and which is true. I mean, I think there's a truth in that, I can understand why people are saying that, and that the best way to, fight this system is to, even if he's got problems, and this is what RFK Jr. would say, is like, vote for Trump because he's the person they don't want. He's the person that can possibly resist what's going on there, even if he is an incomplete and imperfect vessel. So it's really interesting for me to watch lesser evilism sort of recede on one hand. Many people who were Democrats and would do lesser evilism before have left the Democratic Party and now are doing it in the Republican Party. And it's distressing because I think there's lots of awful things that happen when people play lesser evil politics, which partly is what I want to talk about. I know you had mentioned maybe having a friend on the show who was a kind of lesser evil person. I imagine for Kamala Harris, that wasn't able to happen. But I think there's stuff to talk about here about why this lesser evil thing is so. It isn't just one day, and it is really harmful for trying to change the world.
I had a conversation. So we went up to visit my brother, and we did a pit stop, and we visited some of Jorge's
Oh,
family.
can I ask you one question? Do
Yeah.
you think lesser evilism is like, or do you think that the two-party thing is cracking, or do you
No.
think? Yeah. Okay. All right. Sorry. And then, yeah.
If there were any indications of it cracking, the second assassination attempt on Trump just paved a whole way new sturdy platform. You don't have to worry about cracks in that.
Right.
So we were going up north to visit my brother, and we stopped by and visited one of Jorge's cousins. And we were just talking politics, which is typically what we do. We talk more international politics. We talk more about what's happening in our countries. And I said that I don't agree with voting, that I have a real problem with voting. And he said, we went into a little bit more, and I gave some of my opinions, and he quickly jumped, and his first thing was, well, you should vote local matters, which was a lot of what Eduardo was saying in our episode when he was trying to convince me to vote, right? That local politics is where it's at. That's where you really have to get in there and vote. But then when I gave pushback on why I also don't participate in local politics, he quickly stated, well, then you don't have a right to bitch. And at the time, I was kind of like, yeah, I can see that, because if I'm not participating in it, then why am I making judgment of it if I'm not participating in it? But then I was like, no, that's what they want you to believe. They want you to believe that if you want to bitch, then you only have the right to bitch if you're within the system, which means you have to participate, which pushes you against the wall to choose a side. And it's that trap. On the contrary, so I realized that that's just part of the cycle. And this whole vote for the lesser of two evils, that's what we were going with Obama, right? Not lesser of two evils. That was actually like, this is our salvation with Obama. And if that was our salvation and we just got worse than what we were expecting to get, then I just don't see why this is lesser of two evils. The person that I wanted to join us today, I asked her, where are you now? Because she was highly involved in local politics, and she's actually disillusioned. She's actually not voting, which to me was shocking.
Mm-hmm.
And she also made a point that I hadn't thought about it. She said, in her own reflection of why she's not voting, besides being disillusioned with the system, she said she also feels confident that because she's in California, California's going to go blue either way. So it's really like her vote doesn't really matter.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another thing to think about, right? Your vote really doesn't matter regardless of which candidate you're voting for. You're going to get the same shit. And if you don't vote, it really doesn't matter, especially in California or in the states that are not swing states. That becomes more of a contingent when it's a swing state. So
Yeah,
there's more to say, but
there is. And I mean, the first thing I guess I want to take up that question of, well, what about just one day? What? It's just a few hours to go and take that and do that vote. I think what happens when people pursue lesser evil votes or pursue that lesser evil path is they don't recognize in themselves that they've already given up on their principles. They've already said to themselves, the thing that I actually want isn't possible. The thing that I actually want can't be achieved. And so there is so much that is accomplished when people choose to give up on that principle and then essentially make no demands to the political actors that they're speaking to. Like when you do lesser evil politics, you're not saying you need to do this or else. You're literally saying, I'm going to hand you over my vote because I think you're better than the other person. I'm asking nothing of you. I'm demanding nothing of you. I'm not even suggesting anything of you. All you have to do is be you. And then, and I will, and I'm going to give you my stamp of approval. And yes, that's only a few hours to do that. But in my opinion, the damage that does to a person who really needs to fix themselves in a world that's always telling you compromise, give up, nothing you do matters, it's very important that you hold on to that. And so when people say they don't vote, I get very excited. Not that means they may think of themselves as completely being outside of politics. I disagree, because they made a decision to not vote. But I think I believe that's a precursor, a precondition towards saying there is no path to change in that direction. So if there's going to be a path to change, if I'm ever going to say I want change, I need to find that path on my own. And that is the damage done when people are asked to just do it for one day, is they are basically asked to give up on that dream. And anybody knows, like, like when people talk about major athletes or people who had a dream of acting, you have to stay fixated on that thing. You can't give it up. If you do give it up, it doesn't happen. It can't possibly happen. And that to me is the damage of lesser evilism. Is it invites people to give up on themselves and give up on their own dreams. I will also say that on its own terms, lesser evil politics is what was what people back in the year 2000, lesser evil politics is what said, vote for Al Gore, who sucked. Don't vote for George W. Bush, who also sucked, but people thought sucked less. Fast forward, and who was George W. Bush's vice president? Dick Cheney, the man of evil. Fast forward 24 years, and now what do we have? Kamala Harris is the lesser evil for some people, who's endorsed by Dick Cheney, and people are like, yes, Dick Cheney, our guy in 2000, who we thought was our mortal enemy, is now welcomed with open arms by the people who said that they were doing lesser evil back in the day. And I think nothing else can show you how unmoored from principles people who follow lesser evil politics are than that, because it just basically shows they will just move and move and move and move, and at some point, Donald Trump, if they think Donald Trump is the greater evil, Donald Trump's going to be the guy who's going to endorse their candidate because some other crazy evil person's coming out to go against their other person, and that to me for me, the most defining thing about it is, one, it has only brought us more and more harm, this lesser evil approach. And the biggest harm, I do think, it does to people and to the possibility of us ever thinking we're going to make a world that we want. Like, we're ever going to make the world the way we want it to be. Because it's literally saying, I give up on that. I'm just going to kind of hand over my hope to you.
No, and on that note, when you vote, you don't get to distinguish I'm voting for the lesser evil of the two. You are 100% endorsing that person. There's nothing that's going to distinguish them. That person can then come and say, I had 80% of the population behind me. Even if you were hesitant, you are signing off on everything that person is doing. And to your point about the lesser of two evils, now Kamala is the lesser of two evils. How are people making this decision of who is the lesser of both evils? Are you going based off of what you're hearing in the news? Are you going based off of what other candidates are saying, your perception? Because for us in the Bay Area, I know people that are strong advocates for voting, and they are Democrats here in the Bay Area, right? And they are not voting for Kamala. They are voting for Trump because they remember how Kamala was as the mayor of San Francisco and the politics decisions that she made, and how right now she's flying the vendetta for a woman of color, representing people of color, giving them a voice, but she screwed a lot of the people of color here in San Francisco. People forget these things, right? We have short-term memory. So another reason why, if I can't endorse you 100%, and I'm not saying that I'm going to agree with everything that a candidate's going to say, there's going to be compromises. But I just haven't been able to find a candidate that I say, you know what, on the subjects that matter, that are very important to me, I trust that you're going to make the right decision. I trust that you're going to have a voice for what I want. So even that, you're not voting for the lesser of two evils. You're really not. They're in cahoots with each other.
Yeah, and now I want to go back to the Republican lesser evil thing. It will produce the same fruit that Democratic Party lesser evilism has produced, which is not that it's produced nothing. It has actually produced more of what more of what the electorate says they don't want. It has produced it more year by year by year. Each candidate gets worse and worse. The world gets worse and worse. The country gets worse and worse. And lesser evilism is the method for endorsing it and for re-upping your commitment to the project, the political project that delivers it to us. And that's not just true on the Democratic Party side. For all the people who are saying, I'm with RFK Jr. and I'm going to vote for Trump for that reason, or I'm going to vote for Trump. And if you asked me, given all the concerns I have, if you asked me to say who might be a lesser evil, I would tend to say that it might be Trump for all the concerns I have. Although it comes out equal at the end of the day because they're both big capitalist establishment players of different sorts. But on a cursory level, I would understand a lesser evil argument that said I'm voting for Trump. That lesser evil vote for those people is going to deliver them nothing. It's going to not get them anything they want. And the fact that so many people who saw, it's like a lot of the people I've run into are people who saw in 2000 and 2001 that the entire system was coming against them, that it was trying to basically say, I'm going to inject you, I'm going to censor you, I'm going to lock you down. And a major author of that thing, at least certainly in terms of the vaccine and Operation Warp Speed, was Donald Trump. And now you see all sorts of people just saying, we'll just give him a mulligan on that. We'll just let it go. Yes, he wanted for the vaccine, but now he's more for medical freedom because he's kind of got this RFK Jr. guy with him, and it's like, we've seen this before. Bernie Sanders was endorsing Biden. AOC is onboarding Kamala Harris. This is how they play the game. That's what the Democrats do all the time. And now they're playing the exact same game on the Republican side. And I'm watching people who said, they can't believe that this system has been so exposed to them, how awful it is, not just in terms of medical freedom, but the fourth industrial revolution, what's happening digitally and what's happening in terms of AI. And they're walking right back in the system again. And it's very distressing. It's almost like I thought I was just going to have to, I've been dealing with lesser evilism as a kind of crazy head making thing on the Democratic Party side for decades. And I kind of thought I was done with it. And now I'm seeing it resurface all again on the Republican side. And it's amazing what the capitalist class is able to do and just kind of play the same playbook over and over again and just shift the chairs around the table a little bit more, move the chairs or the tables and chairs around the deck, but it's the same game. So it's distressing. I wish I knew what to do about it, but I can tell you, hook, line, and sinker, so many people in the medical freedom movement are super excited. Still lesser evil, they talk it because they don't fully trust Trump, but are super excited to make that vote and think that something will come of it.
Well, it's the not standing your it's the not standing your ground. It's the not, this is the line. Because if you vote for lesser evil, you're pushing your line further down and further down and further down to where your line is gone. You have endorsed and you have voted and you've been okay with so much that at this point you don't have anything to fall on. And that's what gets us to this point of why do we have these two candidates? Well, you kept allowing for these two candidates to come up in the system, and those are your candidates. That's what you get. If you wanted something different, you wanted something progressive, you wanted something refreshing, if you wanted to turn the system upside down, then you should have drawn your line way before any of this bullshit started to come up and stuck to it, right?
Yeah.
Now, what does that look like? I don't know, because I could have told you, what would it be now? I could have told you a year and a half ago, yeah, burn it to the ground, set it ablaze, go out there, pillage.
Right.
But now I don't know that I'm 100% on that either. I also have to admit, as to where I stand now that I have a child, I also have to make certain decisions that I can't necessarily put my neck out there as much as I was willing to before. But then it's what kind of example am I giving? So that's where I'm at. I know I'm not going to fall for the lesser of two evil, but then I have to be able to give my child an alternative. If you're not going to vote, then how are you going to create change? What are you going to do?
Right. Well, I think, and this has been some shifting on my part, that I still don't know what this actually looks like, but I am more convinced that the act of revolution is much more an act of creation than destruction. And to the extent that it is destruction, yes, the old system will need to come down. But I, by and large, believe that it will ultimately be in defense of the new system that you're building, the new thing that you're building that you believe in. And that is that is the very thing that I do think electoral politics, lesser evilism, invites you to forget, invites you to put aside what is your dream, what is your goal, how do you want society to run? Because for a fact, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris and even RFK Jr. are not saying the things that the people who I run into on the ground really talk about when they say the kind of world they want to live in. None of those people talk about that. None of these people at the top, none of those even begin to represent the kinds of changes that the people I came into contact with in the medical freedom movement, in the fourth industrial revolution movement, or certainly in the union movement and in the socialist movement and the left-wing movement. No politician ever even came close to articulating the kinds of things people talked about, what they really want society to look like. And yet they hand their vote over. And I do believe that handing that vote over is a part of them giving up on the idea of asking, well, what do I really want? And then the next question goes, well, how do I start to do that? And that's where I myself, I'm not sure how we get there. I just know we have to let go of this, or I believe, I'm not going to say, I believe we have to let go of this electoral thing, because I do believe it is literally a show. It's literally a trap for us. The decision has already been made. The state will do what it's going to do with any one of these figures. They are just a front for it. They are just the camera film that we get to see. Behind them is a whole operation that's already been decided, that there is no vote about. There's no way you can and so it makes no point to play pretend that we are making decisions about anything, and you certainly shouldn't do it at the expense of giving up on your own ideals and ideals.
Remind me and correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't we used to vote for our presidential candidate? Like, didn't we before have a list of these are all the people that are running under this party, and you choose who you want? Like, they would have had to have gotten the majority of the vote, whereas now it's like, no, this is the person. I mean, I don't know if I'm remembering wrong, but I vaguely remember going down and having a list of candidates to choose from.
That was called a primary, yes.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, that's the funny part. That on the Democratic Party side, that has gone away. Like, I mean, and it was meaning that they had the primary with regards to Clinton, right? In 2016, you had a few candidates, and Bernie Sanders was the guy. Well, Bernie Sanders was winning, and so they rigged it so that he couldn't get up there. Then in 2020, he was coming up again, and all those in order to fight Sanders, all those candidates that you saw, the list of candidates that would normally be there, the Buttigieg's and the Tulsi Gabbards and the Kamala Harris's, they all left the field because Obama said, you guys all got to go. We're going to keep Elizabeth Warren. We're just going to keep Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. And that's the method they used to basically direct Bernie Sanders votes towards Elizabeth Warren. And that's how Biden emerged as the champion there, right? Because they basically said, all these candidates in the field are actually sucking Biden votes away. So we've got to neutralize Bernie Sanders voters by doing this. And then this year, they barely even had a primary. Like, they basically said, no one else is really running. I don't even know if there was other people. There's a few candidates I remember hearing a little bit about, but Biden got millions and millions of votes, and there was no one else really running against him. And they had people who said, we're not going to vote for anybody. There was a campaign around that during the Gaza stuff that when that stepped off. And that's what is so crazy about what has happened today, which is that primary that was a joke primary in the first place has now been completely invalidated because Biden was essentially forced to step off, and Kamala Harris said, well, I'll be your person. You didn't get any votes. Don't worry about it. We had a DNC and they all endorsed me, and then they gave the thing. this is the crazy thing, is that at least on the Democratic Party side, the people who have said we must vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden at the time because we have to preserve democracy because our democracy is at stake in the context of Donald Trump being elected, they have literally watched their entire party abandon any even pretense of democracy. That didn't happen on the Republican side as much. On the Republican side, you've seen candidates, you saw debates. Trump didn't show up to the debate. He still won. He was their guy no matter what. But you at least saw people. And it's at least gives the caricature or at least the signpost of what you would normally call democracy there. In the Democratic Party, it's not even close. And yet its own voters are voting for their candidate on the basis of preserving democracy while their party has completely abandoned it. It's that kind of head fixing shit that really makes me like, it's scary, I have to say.
No, that's why I'm like, so much for the lesser of two evils when you're not even having a real choice. You don't really have a real vote. So I don't understand why people continue to say, vote, let your voice be heard when no. Again, the whole coming back to the circle of then don't bitch about it. That's what they want you to believe. That's what they want you to think that you, these are the best options. Little by little, they just keep pushing you more and more to the wall. And then if you want to say something about it, but you have to participate if you want to talk about it. And then when you participate, your voice just gets drowned out. Like I don't remember voting for a single thing or even the candidates when I did vote. I don't remember any of the things that I was voting them for that they were going to execute, having them actually execute on.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to probably put one of the things I'm going to probably put in the beginning of the show is a little George Carlin monologue where he talks about that very question of like, people told me, because George Carlin says, don't vote. Do you know who George Carlin is?
No.
He's he's a comedian from back in the day. He was like well known in the 80s and 90s, maybe actually 2000 as well. But he does first of all, he says, I don't vote because fuck them both, basically. But he basically said, the reason I can bitch about these politicians is because I didn't vote for them, and he does a very funny skit about that. And I think there's true. I think whether you vote for a person or not, you can complain about them, in my opinion, because hopefully complaining is the beginning of deciding I'm going to do something to change it. But often that's not the case. A question I have is, what about for you on the idea? Because I do think of you as involved and locally involved. I know that, can I say the name of the group or no?
No, actually, no, because we have to stay out of politics.
Okay. I do think what you're doing is you're involved in a grassroots group that has a vision of what it wants to do about it. It's not trying to change the world, but it has a vision about how it's trying to shape its reality around it. And it sees it doing it through the actions of its own members. So I would at least think that for you, Gema, that maybe the notion of voting locally for something, because we're talking just federally, and there are some people who go like, oh, there's no point in, like, even I heard on The Last American Vagabond, when they were interviewing Catherine Austin Fitts, she was saying, well, there's nothing to vote for up federally, but but down ballot people locally, there are things to vote for, which I don't agree with. Like, I think the whole system should be avoided completely, and like, you should reject it. But I'm curious what your reasons are for even thinking the local elections are no good.
Because of the city that I'm in. I think that giving San Francisco is like a mini federal, the way that it's run, the way that the politicians are handled. And it's the same thing. I do not see a single person, even in my local politics, that I'd be like, yeah, I can see you creating micro changes, right? Changes that impact my small community, which is far easier said than done at the federal level. And I can't, because they just screw it up. There's not a single person, because again, they're pushed by these big companies. It's the exact same thing. Kamala went from being mayor of San Francisco to being vice president. Like there was no governor, there was no senator, it went from local to up to federal.
Yeah.
And it's because of the machine. It's the machine that's pushing these politicians, and not just the politicians, but even the propositions, even the small um community-based um efforts. So for example, setting up public restrooms. Like right now in San Francisco, a lot of the nonprofit organizations are being audited for fraud, are being audited for the way that they're handling mismanagement of funds. There's this whole big scandal going on with conflict of interest. And one of those big things are the contracts, right? You want to vote on something you think is good with, like, let's set up some bathrooms so that homeless people aren't, because there was a big thing where you would walk down San Francisco and you would step on poo everywhere, right? So it's like, okay, let's set up some bathrooms. And it took them, I don't know how many years to set up one bathroom, and it cost them a public restroom, and it cost them like one of those little booths, cost them like, I don't know, $1.2 million. But that's what I'm voting for? Because my vote doesn't dictate, well, how are you going to use the money? Who's going to be supervising how this proposition gets executed? What are going to be the repercussions? No, you vote, but you don't see the minute details. And then you're being taxed. You're paying in all this. So all I'm doing is I'm just throwing money at the contractors. I'm throwing money at these big organizations that they're going to then use that money and endorse a bigger candidate on the federal level. So I'm not going to vote for local politics for that reason. Maybe if I was in a smaller city where it wasn't so tech oriented or so much money on the line, maybe. But even then, I don't think so, because I could vote. For example, I've even debated. I'm more on the lines of homeschooling that yet. But if I saw myself in the need to send them to school, would I be involved in the PTA? Right? That's a very, very minute, very local.
Mhm.
And even then, I don't know. But I'm very much involved in my organization where we vote, where we make these decisions, where we do impact the community that we're a part of, and I don't have a problem with that.
Mhm.
So
I think it's an
I just
important
think
point.
it's the city.
Yeah. First off, I want to check about this. Was Kamala Harris a mayor? Because I know she was district attorney. Was she
Oh,
the mayor?
district attorney. Yeah, 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 yeah. No,
Can you want to check on that so we
let
can
me
put
check
that?
on that. Let me look it up. Okay, so yes, you are right. So she went from city attorney to DA of San Francisco, then attorney general
Of California.
of California.
Yeah, and that
And
was when she was that person that she did all her nonsense.
yeah, and then she went, that's it. Yeah. I mean, this is from Wikipedia. Either way, the point is that you skipped. You went from something at local politics to something of having a federal. And I don't know who I'm going to vote. I don't know who I'm going to get that's going to do that. And again, I cannot in good faith vote for any of these fools
Right.
at the
But
local or at the federal.
I guess one last point, or I think this might be the last one, we'll see, is neither of you and I are against voting. Like,
Correct. No.
no. Like, I believe in voting, but I believe voting among people who you know and trust and are working with and organizing with, and you're voting about what you'll do collectively. That I completely believe in, or at least I believe people. That's one way that a group of people can make decisions. There's other ways to do it, but that I believe in. That's not what's happening with our electoral system. It is, you are not making a choice about anything. Everything's already been decided. And I think the example you give that often people say, well, I don't vote for candidates, but I'll vote for propositions. Well, that is allocating money into a system that is telling you, okay, it's telling you this thing about it. It's sold you this product. But do you think that's how it's really going down over there? You trust them? It's like, no, so there is no part of this thing that you can enter into and think that you're making a difference in it. It is, again, it's making a difference in the person.
And now propositions are being bundled up. So you want to vote for this because you feel very strongly about this, right? But if you vote for that, it's bundled up with these other propositions that you are against. So it's all just so muddy. They've made things so complicated to where people don't know. Like I find it very difficult to really know where you're voting on. And again, that oversight, that execution, that who's holding these people accountable for making sure that you do what you say you're gonna do. Because no one, even right? You don't do it at the local level. If we don't even do it at the federal level with some things, with someone being such high level as a president that everybody's watching. You're making big promises, you're managing a lot of money, you're making big decisions. If we're not even holding them accountable, how are we going to hold our local politicians accountable?
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and it is intentionally murky. It's intentionally confusing. It is really just a lie. Ultimately, it's not actually confusing. I think they shield what they're really going to do with these monies, with these things, and they put certain language in these propositions. I don't see any reason. It would make no sense to believe that this is really what's happening. And like you said, what is called so-called corruption. I actually believe it's just the way the system works. Over and over again, you hear how funds are misused and people pilfer things away. And obviously, the wealthy somehow benefit from all of it because they're the ones who put those things in place, and they're the ones who are setting up the game so that they can be even more successful at our expense. So, um, yeah, I mean, I wish I believed that the lesser evil game um, was cracking. For me, it feels like it's re-energized itself with RFK, with Tulsi Gabbard, and with Donald Trump. Um, on the Democratic Party side, it does look a little lame, but on the Republican side, I see wind in the sails of lesser evil politics, of electoral politics, and that's it is very harmful for the prospect of real change, in my opinion.
do you think it's because maybe there have been more Democrats that have gone Republican? Like, I'm interesting to see those numbers. I haven't looked into it, but a lot of people that I've spoken to that were Democrat are starting to go to Republican because they're so disillusioned with the Democratic Party that they somehow now see the Republican Party as revolutionary.
Or yeah, making some kind of change or going against the current in some way. Um, I don't know. I'm new to talking to people. I'm My experience in talking with people who have been in the Republican Party longer has only been the last, since 2020 kind of thing. Um, I don't think it's just because the Democrats are moving into it. That is a feature of it, though. I mean, certainly a lot of the people who are excited, kind of, I'm going for Republicans this time, are people who kind of held their nose with the Democrats. I think they would just describe themselves that way. But I also think the parties have shifted a little bit. Like the party which is pretending to represent the working class is now the Republican Party. And so, in many ways, they're able to rebrand lesser evilism under a different party. So people don't even necessarily think that it's in operation. But it is. It's just as much in play in the Republican Party as it is in the Democratic Party. And we're going to get who Thomas Massey, who's a really, like, everyone loves him because he actually he does seem to stand up for things that people believe in. But the Democrats had people like that. They had their Dennis Kuciniches and things like that people would get excited about. And those people were tolerated by the party, but in no way do they represent what the party's doing. The party is for big business. It's for the rich. It's for the capitalist system. And these other people who are making noise, they're there just to make you think that there's a place for you in it, and that's the only reason they're there. And that's and so I think the Democratic Party has been doing, in my opinion, they've been doing that longer and are more practiced at it. I think it's gotten tired on their end, and I think, yeah, some people have gone there, but I think there's a Republican base also being retrained in this kind of Democratic Party language that I associate with Democratic Party, at least. So I don't know. I imagine Republican people who voted Republican also held their nose sometimes and voted for their candidate. But my sense of it is they're basically getting to do this over again. What I mean is the ruling class is able to do this over again, the same trick, and make it seem like it's not the same hat and it's not the same rabbit.
It'd be interesting to see after a few rounds of voting, of being disillusioned with the Democratic Party and putting your bet and your money in the Republican Party and not seeing goddamn anything changing, where you're exactly where you were with the Democratic Party, I wonder if they will notice it, that they're in the exact same place, that there was absolutely no difference, and realize, man, this is bullshit. Or if they'll just or if they'll forget, they'll have short-term memory. Because you also have to think, we vote every 4 years, and you have younger people that are coming up and voting, and the older folks starting to just weigh out. So I wonder if that's what it is. There's just no way that you're in it for long enough to see the pattern to say, fuck it.
What I saw as the pattern in the Democratic Party, and I think it's going to be the same one in the Republican Party, is people make excuses. People, they said, I voted lesser evil because I was hoping to hold that at bay. And then that thing starts to happen. And then they say, well, they kind of had to do it. Like, they start to make excuses for the candidate that they lesser eviled for. And try to re-justify their own vote in their own minds, because they don't want to believe that they've been betrayed, and that they essentially betrayed themselves. So I think this is the way that people's politics get shifted by this lesser evilism, is they start to make excuses for the candidates as they move away from the things, the few things that they thought they might be holding strong on. As they watch their candidates give ground on that, they begin to make excuses for those candidates. That's generally what I've seen happen. And it's one of the ways that that's how people's politics get shifted over time as well, is in that they start to make the argument saying why the person had to do the thing that betrayed your principle. So I think people are just gonna, I don't know. I have a feeling people are gonna fall in line just as much, like get caught up in this just as much as they did with Democrats. I'm pessimistic about this. And again, I wish it was true that I saw things cracking, but I don't.
Are you so disillusioned with the system that if a candidate rose up, that you were like, okay, maybe this is a legit person, right? Their track record stuck.
I
Would you
wouldn't.
vote?
Yeah, it's not disillusioned. I would say I guess I would say, maybe my first word I said, I hate the system so much. I don't distrust it so much that no, I would not vote. If Andy Libson was running for anything, I would not vote for Andy Libson. If I was going to vote at this point, I would demand that person say exactly everything I would want that person to say. There can be no distance between my beliefs and their statements. That's the first thing I'll say at this point, right now, given this nonsense. But voting is me basically participating in their lie. And so I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to say, I see your lie. I see that you're asking me to participate in it. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to try to make truth over here, and find other people who want to try to do that. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've oftentimes asked myself if there was, because it's the same thing. I'm just so against the system. I'm against everything. At this point, I've been betrayed so much by the system that if I'm not micromanaging it, I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, and
And
I know
that's not a good place to be in.
Yeah, and I know the system is 1,000 times bigger than me.
Yeah.
And if I tried to do anything that I actually believed in, I would just get booted out, thrown in jail, killed, or whatever. Nothing, no effect. If you're going to have an effect, organize with other people trying to fight for that thing you want. It's long. It's the long road, but it's the only road, in my opinion, that can possibly work. And I think the other reason that people do this electoral thing is they think of themselves as being able to have a megaphone for talking about these ideas, and that will trickle down and people will change underneath them. I don't believe in that either. I don't believe it happens that way.
I also think some people use that as an excuse to not be politically involved, because them being politically involved is by them voting instead of organizing locally. It's like, I put my chips on this person. I voted. I did what I needed to do. The
Right.
fact that they didn't hold up their end of the bargain, but I came out. I voted. I participated. I am active, instead of putting in the real work. And you didn't. That's just a cop out.
You didn't, and all you did was played their little kabuki theater game. And the real thing is, like you said, really working with other people that in your neighborhood, in your workplace, in your community. That's what it looks like. And I'm open to all people doing all sorts of things. Like, Brandy is working with a group that's like trying, locally trying to hold the school, the board of supervisors accountable. That's not my thing, but I totally believe in the way they're approaching it, which is they organize together, they make plans together, and it's grassroots. So that I believe in. And I believe that if somebody told me they were maybe doing something that I didn't think was really going to get anywhere, but they were doing it from the grassroots, then I'm all in. I'm like, I completely endorse what you're doing, because I think it's more likely to take you somewhere that's going to make you realize what's going to have to happen to change the world.
It's also oiling up the machine. It's also working on a muscle that you might need if that miraculous day ever comes where revolution
Absolutely.
comes knocking, you know?
It's a complete muscle we will need to build. And Brandy has developed a lot of muscles in that same area. The things she's encountering in this movement that I might not be part of is exactly the shit that I ran into organizing in the union. And I don't mean it from the top. I mean from trying to work with other people, trying to figure out how to actually make real democracy from below. And I believe people have to learn how to do that. And so, do something locally with people that you know and trust. I don't care what it is, like fucking bake sale. We'll do more to change the world than voting. In fact, the bake sale will have move in the positive direction. Voting moves in the opposite direction.
Especially if you're voting for something that's lesser evil.
Yes. Yeah. And I guess you're right. If a person really feels like I'm totally down, I love this candidate, I can't. I mean, I don't believe in their system, but I can understand that they vote because they're down with that person. But if you're just holding your nose and you're going like, I think I'm doing something strategic here, you're getting played, and you're playing yourself. You're playing our movement, and it's just, please stop.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, I don't think that we're going to dissuade anyone from voting for the lesser evil, but
No, but I support.
hopefully they'll think about it. Hopefully they'll think about why it is that they're doing it and just kind of more closely watch the candidate that they voted for the lesser evil and see if that lesser evil came to fruition. And if it did, good job.
Yes.
Because ultimately what you voted for ended up happening. But it's just I don't even think that's gonna happen.
And I would say that even though I don't agree with the Derek Bros and Whitney Webb and when Ryan Christian said that the two-party thing is cracking, I really am glad that people like him are sticking to their guns and urging people to stop being part of this two-party delusion kind of thing. And in that regard, I wanted us to put our vote out there, just our voice out there to say, we agree with that. Stop doing that. Do something that you really want.
Yeah.
Like raising a wonderful little child.
A little revolution. Oh my goodness.
Has he had the chance to wear his what's left onesie?
Soon. It's actually so we set up his clothes drawer so that as he grew out, we were just moving the aisles down the road.
Okay.
So the what's left onesie is one aisle down.
All right.
So
We're getting there.
he's pretty much there. He's just so big. But I'm gonna take pictures of it.
I want to show it right now, but I guess we'll just wait.
But wait.
Yeah. Yeah.
But wait.
But we are making a bit of a plug for our what's left gear, right? So
Yes, and it's actually really nice quality. Like I got in some onesies that I'm like on the quality, but it's actually really nice.
all right, Hema. Well, it was great seeing you again. Great for you to join us back at What's Left again.
I miss the crowd. I miss the energy. I miss Eduardo being like, "Oh, Hema," and I was hoping to catch Alex, but maybe next time.
And I think that we will likely see you sooner than later, correct?
Yes, I knock on wood, been very fortunate that my nugget has been fantastic. That I have not had to stop doing any of my extracurricular activities, none of my organizing. I've been able to continue it. So I feel confident that I can add what's left. You might hear him, in the background, but
Right. And just because people might not be clear what you're talking about when you say nugget, what you're referring to as your child, Darielle,
I'm referring
because
to my
you named
child.
him Nugget from the time when you saw him, like as a little sonogram.
He looked like a little nugget.
So you kept calling him Nugget. I have a feeling he's going to be a 15-year-old being called a Nugget.
Oh yeah, he has so many nicknames, but Nugget will definitely stick.
Yes. All right.
Can you hear him?
No.
Oh, he's up there talking, just he's just having a blast. I'm gonna go hug my baby.
That's great. Well, let's sign off, and
Yes.
I'll let you go and do your mom thing and say hi to Jorge and Darielle and send them my love.
Will do.
Here we go. So that does it for this week's episode. What's Left is a weekly political podcast channel challenging the mainstream left. We post information about our topics and guests on the episode notes wherever you found this episode or on our blog at what'sleftpodcast.com. You can find past episodes to this podcast channel there and connect with us. I remind people, if you like anything you've heard here, please subscribe, rate, or turn on your notifications to any of our 7 platforms on Spotify, iTunes, BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, YouTube, or Telegram. And if you'd like to give us feedback about something you've heard or suggest something for us to cover, contact us through our blog. So for Andy and for Gema, for Darielle, and even Jorge, goodbye this week, or thank you very much, and goodbye, and we'll see you next week.